When you stop trying to explain yourself, convince her of your value, or prove what she failed to notice, you naturally begin building the foundation for regret without forcing it. Most people believe regret is triggered by a dramatic moment, a final speech, or a painful goodbye, but it rarely works that way. Real regret begins in silence, specifically when you detach from needing someone to understand what they fail to protect. When you pull back emotionally, mentally, and energetically, you stop becoming a source of reassurance and start becoming a source of curiosity. You are no longer reacting, no longer chasing, no longer proving. Instead, you choose inner peace over emotional reactions, and that's where regret quietly begins its formation. The truth is, regret never grows in the presence of someone who is still trying to hold on. As long as you are available, predictable, and emotionally accessible, she has nothing to reflect on because your presence comforts her ego. But when you detach, not angrily, not bitterly, not spitefully, but with maturity and calm distance, you take away the emotional safety net she always assumed she could return to. It is not about ignoring her or acting cold. It is about no longer participating in a dynamic that minimizes your value. When your heart stops negotiating, your energy stops pleading, and your actions no longer communicate fear, you automatically become more respected, remembered, and valued. Detachment is not the absence of love, it is the presence of self respect. When you stop reacting emotionally, you show that your peace matters more than winning someone back. This shift transforms you from someone who needs answers into someone who has standards. She begins noticing that your silence isn't a strategy, it's a decision. You didn't disappear to punish her. You simply understood that your dignity has a higher price than temporary comfort. And when a man chooses his self worth over his emotions, he becomes someone she will eventually replay in her mind because there is nothing more powerful than walking away from what you once wanted without forcing anything. Emotional detachment also allows you to operate from clarity rather than impulse. When you're no longer trying to fix what isn't balanced, you're able to see your own value again, not through her approval, but through your own evolution. She begins to question what made you so calm, so quiet, and so unaffected. She wonders if you stopped caring or if you finally realized what you deserved. And in that uncertainty, the seed of regret is planted because nothing shakes a person more than realizing the one who once tried no longer tries. The one who once showed effort now shows peace, and the one who once feared losing is now willing to let go. When you step into the journey of letting her regret everything, the second phase isn't about bitterness, revenge, or hoping she suffers without you. It's about emotional detachment, internal rebuilding, and reclaiming self respect with unwavering discipline. After the initial shock of separation, your mind will naturally replay what went wrong, how she changed, what you could have done differently, and whether she will ever come back. But real transformation happens when you stop trying to understand her choices and start understanding your own value. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you stop allowing her actions, silence, distance, or attention to control your emotional state. It is a personal evolution where you finally remove her from the center stage of your life and place yourself where you always should have been. This stage starts with acknowledging what you feel instead of suppressing it. Let yourself grieve without drowning. Let yourself remember without obsessing. Let yourself care without chasing. In detachment, you're not rejecting emotions, you are learning how to carry them without letting them dictate your identity. You stop texting, stop checking her social media, stop hoping she magically understands your worth, and stop giving her emotional access she did not earn. The power of silence becomes your greatest strategy, not to manipulate her, but to rebuild yourself. Detachment is also about creating emotional independence. When someone becomes the source of your happiness, comfort, validation, or purpose, losing them feels like losing air. But the truth is, they were only a part of your life, not the entire meaning of it. So you begin to rediscover what makes you feel alive. You explore the talents you abandoned, the dreams you postponed, and the identity you buried while trying to please someone else. This shift becomes the moment she unconsciously senses that you are no longer emotionally available. People feel when your attention fades, even when you're silent. And the irony is, emotional detachment creates the exact reaction neediness never could: curiosity and regret. When you detach, she might wonder why your energy no longer reaches her. Why are you not seeking closure? Why are you not proving your worth? Why are you not fighting for her? Suddenly, she goes from being chased to questioning if she lost something irreplaceable. Emotional detachment makes you unpredictable, not because you're playing games, but because you're no longer controlled by emotional dependency. Over time, you will realize detachment isn't punishment, it's liberation. It's the moment you shift from I need her to understand my worth to I understand it myself. That's when regret begins to grow inside her heart, slowly, silently, and deeply, because you became the version of yourself she always wished you were, but now she no longer has access to it. When you reach the point where you accept that your value isn't dependent on someone else's recognition, you begin mastering the art of upgrading and reinventing yourself. Key point three is about turning pain into power, heartbreak into hunger, silence into growth, and separation into transformation. This isn't about becoming someone new to win her back. It's about becoming the man you were always capable of being, but never fully committed to becoming. When she was in your life, there were times you compromised your ambition, silenced your standards, reduced your masculine drive, or made her the center of your emotional world. Now, instead of trying to prove anything, you allow your new life, your progress, and your discipline to speak louder than any apology or explanation could. Self improvement becomes your new love language, not for her, but for yourself. You start by identifying what part of you is unhealed, insecure, dependent, or seeking something outside that should have been built inside. You upgrade your mindset by developing emotional intelligence, learning how to think, not react, how to respond with reason, not panic, how to control your energy, not chase validation. You upgrade your habits by prioritizing fitness, discipline, learning, financial goals, and personal boundaries. You upgrade your focus by surrounding yourself with people and environments that fuel your future, not drag you back into the past. Your life becomes aligned with purpose, not temporary feelings. The transformation becomes evident not in words, but in your presence, your routine, your results, and your confidence. People, including her, will notice that your energy has changed. You are no longer the man who could be controlled through emotion, silence, rejection, or attention withdrawal. You are no longer waiting for someone to acknowledge your worth because as you have built a life that displays it naturally. And while she may try to reconnect, test your emotional access, or observe from a distance, you remain focused because your growth journey is no longer about what you lost, it's about what you're now becoming. And the most powerful part is that true growth makes regret natural and unavoidable. She will eventually see the version of you she prayed for, argued for, or wished you could become. But now you are becoming him without her presence, without her guidance, and without her support. She will realize she walked away from the very man she wanted, but he only emerged after she left. Growth is the quiet revenge that requires no anger, no conversation, no confrontation, just evolution. Every level you reach confirms that the breakup was not the end of your story, but the beginning of your rise. When you stop chasing, stop explaining, and stop trying to convince her of your worth, something powerful begins to happen. She starts to wonder. She begins to question her decision, her assumptions, her beliefs, and the story she told herself about you. But uncertainty doesn't come from begging, texting, proving, or showing desperation. It comes from silence, discipline, and the undeniable energy of a man who is no longer emotionally dependent on approval. The moment she realizes you are not waiting, not hurting publicly, not seeking attention, and not chasing closure, curiosity replaces confidence. She no longer sees you as predictable or guaranteed. Suddenly, she has to face the unknown, a new version of you that she no longer has access to. Regret doesn't come when she leaves, it comes when she discovers that life without you is not as fulfilling as she imagined. At first, she may feel free, excited, relieved, or confident in her choice. But as time passes and comparisons begin, emotionally, mentally, and energetically, she starts to see the difference between what she had and what she assumed she could replace. She remembers the comfort, effort, leadership, stability, loyalty, or passion you brought. She starts to realize how rare certain qualities actually are. The world teaches quickly, and not everyone she meets will match your heart, patience, or capacity. Regret grows when she notices that the man she once took for granted is now becoming the version other women admire, desire, and respect. Your emotional control becomes the trigger. Your lack of reaction makes her think. Your absence creates space for reflection. She begins to wonder if she misunderstood you, undervalued you, or misjudged your intentions. This curiosity slowly turns into nostalgia, then into questioning, and eventually into regret. She may watch silently through social media, mutual contacts, or quiet observations, noticing that your life continues to rise without her. The more peaceful, grounded, and purpose driven you appear, the deeper the realization becomes. She expected pain, breakdown, or longing, not growth, strength, and self possession. The key is understanding that regret is not something you chase or manipulate. It's a natural consequence of alignment and self respect. When you detach, you shift the power dynamic back to neutrality. She can no longer predict your next move, control your emotions, or rely on your presence. You become a mystery again, not because you're playing games, but because you reclaimed your identity and direction. When you no longer try to prove your value, life proves it for you through transformation, progress, and emotional maturity. The regret you're hoping she experiences is not created through force, it is born from your evolution. The moment you finally detach your emotions from the situation, you begin to understand that relationships are not won by holding on the hardest, but by respecting yourself the deepest. Letting go emotionally does not mean you stop caring, it means you stop carrying what is no longer yours to hold. When you no longer replay the past, analyze her actions, or wait for her return, you free your mind to focus on your own evolution. This emotional release is where real empowerment starts because it signals that your peace is now worth more than her presence and your future is no longer chained to the memory of what happened. When you stop emotionally feeding the connection, it naturally loses its power over you, and you reclaim the ability to think, act, and live from a place of strength rather than abandonment or fear. Emotional detachment is not coldness, it is clarity. It allows you to see what you once romanticized, ignored, or justified. The red flags that once looked like passion now look like incompatibility. The emotional highs and lows that felt addictive now look like a cycle that blocked your growth. You start to understand that love without mutual effort becomes imbalance, and affection without consistency becomes confusion. When you detach, you stop trying to guess her intentions, decode her silence, or interpret mixed signals. You no longer give energy to uncertainty because you've learned that clarity is not something you beg for. It is something that must naturally exist between two aligned individuals. As your emotional attachment fades, your internal world becomes quieter. The anxiety that once lived in your chest turns into self assurance. The loneliness that once felt painful transforms into solitude that strengthens you. You stop trying to prove that you're worthy of staying because you already know you are. You begin to realize that love is not something you lose, it's something you carry, and you will take it into a better, more aligned chapter when the time is right. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It happens when you consistently choose yourself, honor your standards, build your confidence, and grow beyond the version of you that tolerated emotional instability. Ironically, emotional detachment is what often makes a woman truly see a man's worth. When she notices that you're no longer emotionally tied to her choices, her actions, or her absence, she starts to question everything. The man who once cared too deeply now stands grounded, focused, and unbothered, not in anger, but in acceptance. That level of emotional discipline is rare, attractive, and powerful because it proves you were never desperate for her. You simply love sincerely, and now you are healing intelligently. In the end, emotional detachment is not about forgetting her, it is about remembering yourself, rebuilding your identity, and choosing peace over attachment. When you reach the stage where your transformation is not performed, not exaggerated, and not shared for validation, but simply lived as your new normal, that is when you truly rise above the past. Genuine personal elevation is not loud, it's not attention seeking, and it's not a performance for an audience. It is a quiet, disciplined evolution that becomes evident through how you speak, how you move, how you think, and how you choose. When you no longer try to prove that you've changed, that's when your change becomes undeniable. The man who was once reactive becomes centered. The man who once waited becomes focused. The man who once questioned himself now trusts his path without needing applause or emotional reassurance. You no longer seek closure because you created your own. You no longer seek validation because you stand firm in your identity. You no longer justify your decisions because you are no longer seeking support. You're seeking alignment. There comes a moment when you finally see that losing her did not break you. You redirected you. It forced you to confront weaknesses that you would have ignored if she stayed. It pushed you to rebuild pillars of confidence. masculine purpose, emotional balance, and self respect. And now, instead of wanting her to regret leaving, you begin to appreciate the lessons that shape the man you are becoming. You start to understand that some people are chapters, not conclusions, and the value they brought was not in staying forever, but in awakening parts of you that needed to evolve. The growth that once felt painful now feels meaningful because you can see how every struggle sharpened a new strength. As you continue to progress in silence, something unexpected happens. Your life becomes too fulfilling to look backward. You start to enjoy your own presence, your own goals, your own routine, your own standards, and your own expansion. You realize the journey is no longer about changing for someone else, but mastering yourself for your own life. And while she may eventually look back, remember you, or reflect on what was lost, you now see that your destiny was never tied to someone's ability to stay, understand, or appreciate you. Your destiny is tied to your purpose, your discipline, your emotional intelligence, and your willingness to grow regardless of who watches. This final phase is the highest level of maturity because you don't need revenge, regret, or recognition. Your life becomes the evidence, your peace becomes the proof, and your evolution becomes the answer. She may regret, she may wonder, or she may not, but that is no longer your focus. The art of letting her regret everything has nothing to do with making her hurt, and everything to do with making yourself whole.